Hello, welcome to my second Dodgy Dioramas video. I must say I'm completely overwhelmed by the response on the first video. I'm very scared I won't live up to it on the second. But hey, we got to give it a go, haven't we? What you're seeing now is me trying to work out the overall size of the footprint of the diorama. The figures I've already printed out are again from Loot. The guy with the backpack is the adventurer, and he's a free model, so I'll provide a link to that one. The guy with the buffalo is a 3-month reward figure, so you will need to have subscribed to Loot for 3 months to be able to get that one. With everything worked out, I'm going to sit it all on this piece of scrap plywood I found, and it's thin enough to cut with a standing knife, which is just as well as I don't have anything else. The first task is to glue some 20mm thick XPS foam to this plywood base, and to do that I'm going to use some coarse sandpaper on the foam to really rough it up, and then add some Gorilla Glue, the type that foams up, so you'll have to weigh it down as the foam expands in the glue. It will push things apart if it's not secured. Now, I had never used this glue before, and I'd forgotten the curing time. So after weighing it all down with the kettlebell, I decided to read the instructions. And the first thing it says is dampen the area with water to activate the glue. Who says I never read instructions? Fortunately, this gluing area is under no stress and it turned out fine. But from now on, I'll dampen the area down before using it. I've sketched out the profile of the bridge, and here I'm just trying to work out the height I'd like it, and then transfer this to a thin sheet of plywood for use as a template when cutting the foam. When pushing the foam through the hot wire, you've got to let it cut at its rate and not try and force it. There's a great temptation to push harder and harder to try and speed things up, but you'll risk snapping the wire doing that. Just be patient and go as slow as necessary. Now repeat 5 times and then stack them all together to test whether I've got enough width for the bridge. I'm happy it's wide enough, just. The buffalo's going to be a tight squeeze, but that's all part of the story I'm trying to convey here. So it's now a simple task of just gluing all the slices together to form one big block. And yes, this time I am giving one side a spray of water to activate the glue properly. I must admit it's a very satisfying process, gluing all these bridge pieces together. Maybe I could have got hold of some much thicker foam to do it in less slices, but it's all I had to hand and I'm sure it'll work fine. It's at this point I'm wondering how I'm going to clamp it all together while the glue sets. I've got some kettlebells to weigh it all down, but will the foam take the weight? And should I drive some skewers through to stop the slices sliding around? And in the end I just went with the kettlebells, as it could take the weight, which I was quite amazed at, as the heaviest bell was 16 kilos and there was no sliding, so skewers not needed. I made the bridge oversize so it gives me some positioning scope on the base, and here I'm just marking where I'm going to position it and slice off the excess. A quick check to make sure the hot wire is perfectly vertical. This is a lot of foam to get through, so I'm taking it very carefully. And I noticed on the barrier between the slices where the Gorilla Glue resides, it takes the hot wire a lot more effort to get through. It is foam, so it can cope, but I'm very dubious about the fumes coming off the glue, so a mask is very important as well as good ventilation. While the bridge is loose and not fixed down to the base, I'm taking the opportunity to do as much work on it as possible, as it's a lot more convenient like this. And the first task is to unify all the slices, and I'm finding very coarse sandpaper doing a great job hacking away large chunks of it. After the bridge is nicely sanded down, it's on to marking out where I want all the various stones that make up the construction of the bridge. They're not uniform, as I quite like the random stone nature of these very old bridges. The technique I'm finding that works very well is to first go round all the mortar line with a scalpel, cutting into it quite deeply, and then using the point of a skewer to open up that line, and then finally go in with a round ball tool to really open it up and round off the edges. A little spray of water, small amount of glue spread around nicely, and stick the bridge into position. Now, to secure the bridge in place while the glue cures, remember it's foam based, so it's forever trying to expand the gap. I'm going to put some skewers in at an angle and way down the top. While the bridge is drying, I'm going to build up some of the landforms with the odd scraps of foam I've been collecting, and this can be quite crudely done as the final shape will be carved later. I just need some bulk in there, so I've got something to carve. And the same as the bridge, and it's going to be held down with skewers while the glue dries. Then the whole thing can be left overnight. The glue is dried overnight, and now I'm just trimming up the overhangs on the hot wire cutter. Of course, now I've decided I need some more height in the land masses, so I'm going to stick some more blocks on. While I've got the second layer of foam gluing up, I thought I'd have a go at making some boulders. Now this scene needs a lot of boulders, as in my head what's going on is an ancient rockfall has left all these boulders everywhere, and a stream has cut its way through, and the local bridge makers just used some of these boulders to build the bridge, so everything will be made of the same material. Now my first attempt at making these boulders, I use a Stanley knife to cut the facets, and then taking a small knobbly real stone, smash its texture into the surface of the foam. I later find that I can do away with the knife and just rip the foam into shape with my fingernails, and this gives a better surface for the stone smashing to work on, plus it ends up a lot quicker, so win-win. Now I'm taking a break from boulder production to make the stream bed, and I'm basically going to treat it in the same way as I'm doing the boulders. So I'm starting off by ripping and tearing at the foam with a Stanley knife and using my fingernails to gouge at it, just to make some sort of very rough surface so that when I glue the boulders in, any gaps will still look like more boulders. Now the task is to glue all these boulders down to the stream bed, and using the foam glue, having to clamp it down and wait ages for it to dry didn't seem like a great idea. So I got hold of some foam safe superglue. The normal superglue will start to eat away at the foam, but this stuff, Rocket Odorless Crystal Clear Foam Safe Non-Blooming oh god knows how you're supposed to pronounce it, glue, bonds in 10 to 20 seconds and works beautifully on the foam. It is rather expensive though, that's the only downside, and I did end up needing a second bottle. I soon ran out of boulders and had to carry on making more, lots more. My fingers started to get a little sore from it all. Who says I don't suffer for my art? The most distinctive part of this bridge is the stone spikes that make a sort of guard rail, and it's the part that attracted me to this bridge in the first place. So I've carved some suitable looking stones in the same way as all the others, and I need to bed them into the bridge so they look like they really are part of it. And to do that, I'm just carving into the bridge a little bit, giving them all a flat platform to sit on, especially as they go up the slope in the middle. I don't want them to sit at an angle as they go up the slope. On the original bridge, the spikes are infilled with horizontal thin slabs of stone, but I've decided to stack them vertically for no better reason than I think it looks better that way. The next thing I've decided to do is take some leftover boulders and cut them into thin slices and pave the road going over the bridge with them. And hopefully when I sprinkle sand and bits of debris all over it, it'll bed in quite nicely and look like quite an authentic stone road. Ever since I put all the boulders down, I've been slightly concerned as to how unnatural it all looks. Really does look like a load of boulders plonked in place. The hope is when I fill all the gaps up, it'll look far more natural. So here I am, mixing up my favourite chinchilla sand and tile grout, roughly 50-50, and I'll pour this all over the boulders and try and get it into all the nooks and crannies, leaving just the top edges still visible. To secure it all place, I first give everything a light spray with isopropyl alcohol. This helps to cut the surface tension, and then I thoroughly soak everything in a 1 to 3 mix of PVA and water, the PVA being the one part. And it's best to time this late at night so you can leave it overnight to dry. The next day I did decide I needed far more, so I did the whole process a second time. I also took the opportunity to do the same with the roadbed. And now the really fun bit, I'm going to add some black acrylic paint to matte Mod Podge. And with this mixture I'm going to paint it over everything on the diorama. This will help protect the diorama, especially the foam, and mixing the black in at this stage will help the painting process as it sort of acts as a black primer. I will give it 3 coats of this mixture, letting each one dry, and that should give it maximum protection. Now everything has thoroughly dried, it's time to bring out all the textures that smashing the foam with a real stone imparted. I'm taking some white acrylic and a coarse bristle brush and dry brushing over everything. This makes the paint just hit the top surfaces, leaving all the nooks and crannies and dents the original black. And in 30 seconds to a minute, it totally transforms the look. After dry brushing the white, I do the same with a little bit of brown, just to add a little bit of colour and not overdo it. For the stonework, I'm going to have to do it in sections thanks to gravity, and here I'm just trying to get some tile grout to go into the mortar cracks, and it's a simple matter of roughly pouring it over and using brushes to try and take it all off again. So all you have left is the tile grout in those deep mortar cracks. Plus I don't mind some of it over the face of it as it all adds to the rich texture. So as before, quick spray of isopropyl alcohol and then saturate the whole area with a dilute PVA mix. I'm now taking a very dark, very watery acrylic mix and washing it over everywhere. This tones down any stark white areas, and most of the paint, being so runny, just flows into the cracks and darkens them up even more, which all adds to the contrast, making the highlights pop. I have a bag of WW Scenics Forest Ground Cover, which has a nice reddy tinge to it that just gives another hint of colour, and I'm simply spreading it over the roadbed with the usual isopropyl alcohol and diluted PVA to fix it all in place. Now, no self-respecting river can exist without a shopping trolley in it, so without any real plans in mind, I'm just winging it and putting together some coffee stirrers and skewers and making my rough idea of what a medieval shopping trolley might look like. I'm imagining solid wheels so as to keep it simple, and the bed of the shopping trolley is going to need some boards, so I'm just super gluing some sticks together to make those boards I can work with. I do find these coffee stirrers perfect for a representation of larger planks of wood at this scale, but they are very hard wood and it takes a little bit to cut through them. I often think, should I be using balsa wood, as that's much easier to cut, but I have a lot of coffee stirrers and the end result I feel is a lot stronger, but the jury's still out on that one. In the future I may try balsa. I found a coin to be a very convenient template for the wheels, but as I said before, cutting that shape with the very hard wood, a little tricky. I could do with one of those circular sanding tables, which I'm sure would have made short work of it, but I haven't really got the space for one, but I managed okay. I had the idea after drilling the holes for the axle, I could just leave the wheels on the drill, spin them round on some sandpaper and get them nice and round and exactly the same size. This did work perfectly, apart from the first attempt. I did fire one of the wheels across the room and nearly lost it, but the second time I was far more careful and successful. Right now I think a bit of a build montage, as it's all pretty much the same. Chop some wood, drill some holes, glue everything together, rinse, repeat. Maybe I should have some music in these little sections, but then what type of music? Whatever I choose, some people will love it, some people will hate it. I'd love to know in the comments, would you prefer short silent sections or a little bit of music? I'm on the fence. I did find these skewers very fiddly and they wanted to flop all over the place, but a bit of perseverance and I got there in the end. A quick check of how it's going to look on the rocks, and onto the painting, which is a very simple process. Cover everything in black, let that dry, and then get some greys and browns and dry brush them all over. With very little effort you can get quite a convincing old wood look. I took quite a bit of time playing with the position of the shopping trolley, and I finally decided on this resting place with one of the wheels fallen off alongside it. We now come on to the scariest part of all, pouring the resin. You hope you've sealed everything properly, as there's a chance this resin could eat into the foam, but the 3 layers of PVA and acrylic paint should be enough, but you're never sure. And the dam at the front could always fail. I initially was going to hot glue a strip of acetate along the front edge, but I didn't have any, and I've no shops anywhere near me that sells that sort of thing. I didn't want to wait for a delivery, especially since there's an awful lot of postal strikes going on in England at the moment. So I'd seen many channels just use tape, so I thought with some trepidation I'll give that a go. The resin I chose to use is from Anweller, and it's a resin made for crafting and comes in quite small bottles. It would be more economical to buy something much larger, but I didn't know when I was next going to use any resin, and it'd be tragic if the excess went off and I had to throw it away. But I was so stressed and worried about the pouring, I completely forgot to film it, or at least I thought I was filming it, but I hadn't pressed the go button. Suffice to say, it actually went well and all disasters averted. The last thing to do to this part of the diorama is to put some countryside scenics over to simulate some moss-like growth over the rocks, as I imagine this is a very damp area, and that's a simple matter of adding some PVA glue where I want the moss to stick and sprinkling it all over, waiting for it to dry, and then shake the excess off. We're getting close now. I've only got the figures to go, and they need a little bit of clean up plus some gaps and holes filled. And I thought I'd try a little concoction of super glue and corn flour mixed together to make a paste, and I must say it worked rather well. You had to work fast as the paste set hard very quickly because of the super glue, but it did set hard and was very easy to sand. With the figure painting, I'm going to try a technique I heard of where you start off with a black primer and then quite heavily dry brush white all over it to pick out all the details, and then using washes of colour go over this foundation, and in very quick order you should be 80-90% of the way there, and I think it worked rather well. It's never going to win any painting figure awards, but that's not what I'm after here. I've still got so much to learn when it comes to figure painting, so I'm not going to attempt to give a full tutorial here. I'll probably get everything wrong, so I'm just going to leave it as a little montage of what I did and then on to fixing the figures into place. With the figures all painted up, I'm now going to fix them in position. For holding the figures in my little painting stand, I already had little brass wires drilled into the base, so that was very useful for securing them onto the bridge. I just needed to drill some holes into the bridge, which was quite easy since it's mostly foam, although the crust of woodland debris took a little drilling through. But after a little bit of careful positioning, I just had to push down on the figures, which left a little bit of an indent that I could see, and use that as a guide to drill the holes. Then it was a simple matter of putting super glue down those holes and dropping the figures in, and the job was done. Well, that's Diorama 2 finished. I must say I had huge fun making, and I've already got number 3 planned, and I'll waste no time in working on it. So it'd be wonderful if you could subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss my 3rd installment, which I hope to bring to you a little bit quicker than this one. The first diorama took me a year, this second one took 2 months, so I'll see if I can get it closer to 1 month this time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.